What the Heck's your source for Warhammer Underworlds and under 30 of the world's best vying to be the top of the pile. I'm your co-host, Davy. With me is my longtime co-host, Phil, world champion of our hearts. How are you doing, Phil?
Doing pretty well. Champion of the people, you might say.
You might say it twice, even.
You might even have to make that joke twice.
Hopefully not three. For context, we're recording on Monday the 13th, and if you couldn't figure out from my amazing intro, we are going to cover the World Championship of Warhammer, specifically the Warhammer Underworlds event. There are, I believe, 17 players going, and they are going to be battling it out this week. We do not have anyone in attendance as a participant. We do have Brian is going to be there as a judge. So as this releases, it's been going on for 2 days. As we're recording it, it has not yet started, and we're kind of excited to talk about what's going there and make some predictions. But before we jump into that, we did have our own local Q4 tournament. Phil, you got to go to that. I did not for work reasons. Didn't work out, but how was it? Seems like it was a good time.
Yeah, it was pretty great. We had in total 8 players, though Brian was getting some additional judging practice before having to judge Worlds, so he was the bye. We had one pretty new person from our local group, and he had a great time. And we had Jimmy from... Oh, man. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I don't remember exactly which town you're from, but I know he's driving up from Illinois, and it's an over an hour drive. So appreciate making the trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. We sort of had an interesting mix of players and factions, and nobody brought any of the super crazy top tier stuff. So it was nice battling it out without some of the boogeymen showing their faces. And Skylar has continued his tradition of including some acrylic prize support for our local group. He's kind of just taken that upon himself to do. So we had Grand Faction What the Heck's branded activation tokens up for grabs again. And then this time he made a custom glass trophy for us, which was beautiful. And I wish I had been able to stay a little bit longer to see it in a little more detail, but we were in a little bit late, and I had to get running because I needed to be home for dinner. But it was a really good time, and hopefully we can get some of those pictures onto the Discord because that trophy is gorgeous.
They are there. They're in the Underworlds General, I believe.
Good deal. I know there were some pictures. I wasn't sure if the trophy made it up there.
Yep, because I got to see it and it looked awesome. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was personalized to Madison, but definitely looks like you instantly recognize it as a Underworlds trophy because of the silhouette. So Pretty amazing work. I know Skylar's been burning it at both ends between work and family and Underworld stuff. So I hope he's getting a good rest now.
Yeah, yeah, he's earned it.
Yeah. We're going to jump past some of our usual segments here, other than the fact that, I say that. Let me take that back a little bit. Community shout out. I'll just briefly say that I did get to be a guest on Underworlds Underground. I had a really fun time with them and then listened back to it and enjoyed listening to it as well. So that was cool. It was fun jumping on. I don't know. I guess I didn't tell you this. I probably haven't talked to you. I got on there and they're like, hey, I've been listening to you for a long time. All this, they're saying a bunch of nice things. And all I could think about was that same morning we had dropped episode 120. Added only my half of the audio and unedited at that. And I was just like, God, just the most unprofessional possible. Yeah, it was rough. I had changed some of my, I don't bore anyone with the details, but I had changed some file titles and had gotten sloppy. I was trying to rush through some things. In my defense, I think once you include this podcast, I'll have recorded between ours and guest spots 7 episodes in 7 weeks and edited 5 of them. So
Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's actually, I mean, maybe not surprising, but like the fact that that's the first time something like that has happened in over 120 episodes is, I think that's pretty good.
yeah,
It's pretty
you
good.
say that, but yeah, it bothered me a bunch. So if you were one of the first 100 people to download, then you got only one side of the audio. I got some well-deserved heckling for it from some folks, but we've got it corrected. We're gonna try not to ever do that again, but we'll see.
Yeah, that would be the optimal
goal,
situation.
But yeah, let's jump into it. Let's jump into this main topic. I just wanted to touch on, so it's World Champs, and the idea, this is the first year that GW is doing it, is that I think they have Kill Team, AOS, 40K, and Underworlds are all contributing to the overall score, and one nation will come out a victor. And I it's a number of different things, like how well did you do, and even there's reasons to keep playing even if you're not going to win the overall thing, because placing somewhere or placing best in faction and all that sort of thing is helpful to your nation. So
Yeah.
They have a full breakdown of exactly how all that works, but we're really, for the purposes of this podcast, interested in the Underworlds piece. So
Absolutely.
Phil, we kind of did a quick breakdown of all the different nations attending. There's some interesting quirks here. You want to run it down for us?
Yeah. So across the entire world, we've got 2 players from the United States, 1 from Australia, 1 from France, 6 from Canada.
What?
Yeah. 2 from Poland, 1 from Chile, 2 from the Netherlands, 1 from Mexico, and 1 from Spain.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the Americas and Europe. And then we have our one friend coming from Australia, which that's quite the trip.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I had an opportunity to go play at Worlds, I'd probably do it too.
Totally.
But yeah, so I mean, it's a cool representation. A handful of different countries. The 6 from Canada kind of stood out to me, but as we discussed in our Discord, it was pointed out that actually 2 of the people from Canada made the trip down to the larger events in the US and managed to win their tickets from us. So I guess US, step it up.
Yeah, I guess so.
And then the other one that I thought was a little strange was nobody from the UK.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Yeah, GW.
They're all just happily playing away at Warhammer World there.
Yeah, they get a 30-person event like on every month. So they're like, it's fine.
Yeah, we're not running down everybody's names. One, because I don't know if folks want their names shared and all that sort of thing, and that. But it is cool. We hear a lot about the U.S. Canada meta, the European meta, but I'm kind of excited to see what the fellows from, or the folks I should say, from Chile or Mexico are bringing to it. So
yeah.
It's sometimes you end up with those like weird metas that operate independent of what other people are doing. So who knows? It'll be fun to see these different players and play styles mix in one spot. So that's the individuals that are going. Like that's the national breakdown. Big salute to Canada. Obviously, Captain Murder is perhaps the most notorious among those.
Quite the name too.
Infamous. It means famous, right?
Yeah.
We are excited for those guys. He's a good dude, and I know some of the folks are cool. The other thing we should mention is that that list of names is like a murderer's row from the Vassal Discord. There are a lot of names that you will encounter on that Shark Tank that is the Vassal community. So
yeah,
which good. Yeah,
I mean, not surprising, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So good luck to all involved. And I think Path to Glory is representing the USA. I think it's Mark and Oman are the 2 USA reps.
Yep.
Yep.
I just came so close, but not quite there.
Yeah, I think we had a second and a third. We had some brushes with that. So
Yeah,
maybe we'll get our chance at some point to rep. But obviously, those are good folks to be for the USA.
absolutely.
Uh, so all right, well, let's talk about what factions are being brought to the mix. So out of 17, there'll be one bonus player, or extra player. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of what the breakdown is, and then we'll kind of dig into it a little?
Absolutely. So we have, in no particular order, we have Gnarl Spirit Pack with 4 players, bringing Gnarl Spirit
Oh,
Pack. Whoa. We have Ephilim's Pandemonium with 3 players, Hexbane's Hunters with 3 players, Damatan's Storm Coven with 2 players, a lone Molog's Mob, Siren Eyes Razors, Crimson Court, Headcrackers Mad Mob, and Gore Chosen of Drom. Uh, so a lot of names there that you would probably expect to hear, especially in those multiple representation war bands. Um, but anything that stands out immediately to you is like, A, this is really weird that we're even seeing it, or B, why aren't we seeing this?
yeah. I mean, there's a few things. The uh, the stone cold baller of whoever is bringing this Sirenized Razors player.
Yeah.
That is salute. I'm excited to see what they can pull off there. We should say we'll talk a little bit about possible deck pairings. We don't know what they're paired with. Molog's Mob. I'm kind of shocked in a Nemesis environment. So
Yeah.
I don't. But we'll dig more into that. For me, I would have expected more Storm Coven. They seemed like that in my mind. That was the go to, and maybe there's a whole lot of counter picks there. We'll kind of dig into that some more too.
Yeah.
And Gnarl Spirit Pack, we don't actually see them all that much locally, so I'm surprised to see them as the most represented. I might have expected to see Domatan 4 copies of them and Gnarl Spirit 2 copies, like kind of reverse their pick.
Yeah.
Um,
And obviously we can talk about it a bit more with their cards and stuff, but my guess is that Domitans, like, having played them quite a bit, they're like kind of a mentally exhausting warband because you're
mm,
constantly having to track your activations for your inspires.
yeah,
So I just wonder if that's part of it, but people are just like, I don't want to have to try and manage all of that across, a 2-day
sure,
tournament with really high stakes where you're just like, I
yeah,
don't want to have a mental error.
yeah,
Um,
fair
but yeah,
enough.
I don't know. I mean, I think at least locally, some people shied away from Gnarl Spirit Pack because when they first came out, it was like, this is ridiculous. And I think they're, especially now with their beta rule, which isn't a beta rule anymore. I don't know what to call it. I guess just their errata.
Yeah,
Uh, they're much more manageable. Like I don't even see them really as a problem anymore. So
yeah.
maybe we'll just have to bring them back out and sort of let people know that, like, hey, actually this isn't a problem anymore.
Well, before we go too much in them, do you is there anything you're surprised to not see in this list?
Well, a little bit surprised not to see Canaan's Reapers after they won over at Nova.
Mm,
Although I think that is again one of those mentally uh, like taxing warbands to play, especially because the pairing is with the Void Curse Thralls. So
yep.
I do imagine that there's like just a lot to have to manage with that. Although, I mean, Kanan can just kind of go nuts a la
Yeah.
Malog, and I don't know that that's like a hugely mentally exhausting thing. But there's a lot of bodies to keep track of. There's a lot of extra movement, so maybe that's why. But like, I kind of would have expected to see them. And then another one that I feel like we've been seeing a lot of, although maybe not a lot of high like placings, is Rippas.
Mm.
And so I
That's a good
thought,
point.
oh, maybe somebody would bring Rippas. Like,
Yeah.
I would have certainly more have expected to see Rippas than Moloch.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For me, I was surprised that nobody was willing to take a swing with Thricefold Discord. Maybe there's just not enough time to get the reps in.
That,
Um,
yeah,
I I'll be honest, like I don't have the reps to say whether they would have been great into this or not. I'm curious. Those um, those false gifts have the potential to really put some control on what we would expect from the biggest bads out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to think about it very quickly with, since, probably don't want to deep dive on them too much, but like everything that they could be doing with the false gifts is really going to hamper Ephelims, Hexbanes, and Domitans, right? Like
yeah,
it would be pretty nice to have those matchups, but uh yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could be just they're new enough, not feeling confident, don't know the pairing maybe
sure.
yet. Um, I don't know how they match into the really aggressive like Gnarl Spirit pack. That feels maybe also a
Yeah,
little rough, but
yeah,
hard to say. But I
yeah.
agree. So they seem cool. I'm almost certain that whatever the next large tournament is, someone will be using them.
Yeah. If not me, then who?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, all right. Well, let's get into it. So, I would suggest we just take it by we go with the most frequently chosen and march down. Does
Yeah.
that sound good to you? Okay.
Seems easy enough.
So we've already talked a little Gnarl Spirit pack here. 4 representations. Why do you think we're seeing this warband? Let's start with that, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we might see as deck pairings with them.
Yeah. So when I look at Gnarl Spirit Pack, the reason in my mind that they are like a go-to pick is sort of twofold. One, I think they have above average stats across the whole warband. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
almost nothing about any of their fighters that's like even just average. Like the closest you can sort of come is like, okay, Crimson Cura's 1 block, 3 wounds. But then you look at her attacks and you're like, oh, never mind. She's way above average for her attacks. So it's like, okay, you've got 4 very reliable fighters, which gives you a lot of flexibility. And then I think the aggressive strategy can sometimes be, besides the dice, can be a little more forgiving. In
Yeah.
that, like, if I, make a mental error, well, I was just charging anyway. So, like, that's my take on it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. I think they have the speed and aggression that maybe, because that's one thing. And the times that I've really been able to give FLM problems is you either need to, what the worst thing you can do in FLM against FLM, which I assume, and to be fair, also Storm Coven, if you can get it, if they can set up a situation where they just have their firing squad waiting for you to like move and be isolated in there, then they're happy.
Yeah.
And that seems a little counterintuitive. These guys can be aggressive enough though that I think they can like put that speed into blitz and really, really put the danger on FLM. And maybe to a lesser extent, Storm Coven, just get them on the back foot before they have a chance to draw into that huge slew of pings that we know that they have.
Yeah.
And who knows, like Blackwing Sarkar is a disposable caster. I don't know if we'll see any pairings with that, but there's some possibilities there. So I think it might just be that ability to be aggressive and maybe punch harder than those top dogs are willing to take. But
yeah,
TBD.
For sure. And I think the speed is an important factor there because, like, there's a lot of warbands that hit hard, but they're not nearly as fast.
Right.
And I think, it almost shows in the sense that the thing that brought them back into line was that their errata just slowed the timing of the spirit counter by the one activation. It doesn't come in until after they've activated once. And that it was enough to like bring them back into like line of being like, oh, this isn't so horrible because they're not all like speed 5+ or multiple block right out the gate.
Yeah, and they're sporting. They in faction they've got some pretty decent end phases. They've got some good objective support, which which in Nemesis is a big deal.
Very
So,
big deal.
and we give this all with a caveat, as like we said, we are not seeing Gnarl Spirit Pack all that much in our locals. So these guys, not a total mystery to us. We've certainly seen plenty of them, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I've seen the latest greatest. What do you think that they might be paired with? What should be what would be your best guess about this mix of four?
I mean, I think the old default for these guys especially is almost always Tooth and Claw. They, as you mentioned, they have a lot of really solid objectives, and Tooth and Claw has a lot of really strong power cards, albeit for range 1. And most of their fighters are range 1. So
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense that you'd pair those things together.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, if you want better objectives, then Tooth and Claw is not great. Like, I actually have looked at Tooth and Claw so many times thinking this is going to be excellent for whatever old aggressive warband I want to take off the shelf. And I'm just like, nope, that's not going to work. I've got like maybe a 15 glory objective deck, and I'm stretching some of the like in-faction choices.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ooh, that feels rough. I'm probably not feeling confident if that's what I'm having to work with.
Yeah. I agree. I think that is probably their default. I'm curious if anyone was willing to take a crack at Breakneck Slaughter with these guys.
Yeah.
If Kira is scything and gets those the different charge gambits.
Oh man, yeah.
Which
either one of them
contribute to every. Yeah, she can either get even more accurate make her like a five dice
5
Grievous
fury
one.
with Grievous and scything. Yeah, it's
oh my god,
pretty nuts.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot happening there. So I'd be curious if somebody goes for that, like says, I'll take even more speed, please, and thank you. And take some of the aggro stuff they got. I just don't know, but I think you got to assume that the default is Tooth and Claw there.
Yeah, I think the other side of it is that Tooth and Claw adds more damage. Like there's just options in the upgrades for more damage, and sometimes that's just what you need. Like there's been a number of times where I've felt in Nemesis where I'm like, man, if only I had one more damage on this attack, I would be able to threaten kills here. And instead I'm having to set up these like multiple instances of damage to try and make this happen, and knowing I'm going to be receiving the crackback in the meantime.
That's fair. And then unless, once they inspire or in some cases become beasts, everyone except Crimson Kira can get to 2 dice on defense. So the defensive boosts that are offered in Breakneck Slaughter are not quite as necessary, I guess. So.
Yeah, they're still great. I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone for taking either one of these in the pairing. Right. I think. I do think there's a few other things to consider with just how you have to work around the impetus, though. So, my choice, I think, would still be Tooth and Claw, but I would certainly be willing to test out Breakneck Slaughter. But as I say, test out is not something I want to be doing at Worlds.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk Pandemonium.
Yeah.
They're the next. We're seeing 3 of those. I don't know that we need to say a lot about why this warband is taken.
No, probably not.
We've talked at length about how great they are. They had a very modest errata to bring a couple things into check, but they have some great stuff. They have the upgrade that heals 1 after you take damage, which unless you are killed by a ping is basically ping prevention. It can keep Ephelum alive to a pretty impressive degree.
Yeah.
And then, like I've said many times, they have great stat lines that can be inspired on demand, basically, and objectives that just feel like they can flow like butter. That are often very, very difficult to counterplay.
Yeah.
So they have like a glory floor that is pretty challenging to overcome.
Yeah. When the glory totals in Nemesis are pretty much sort of stuck around, like you're plus or minus a little bit from 15, right? Like that's sort of where things come in on average for most Nemesis decks. And I'm pretty sure most decks for FLMs can be quite a bit above that if they really want to reach. And they can be just slightly above that and feel pretty comfortable, I think, still, which,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an advantage, right? Like it's just, they have really solid in-faction objectives, really solid in-faction upgrades. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a lot about them that's like, so what's the catch? It's like, no,
Yeah.
no catch. They're just good.
If I think we're not going out too much of a limb here with our guesses as to pairings. I think historically there's just been discussion like, do you go Fearsome Fortress or do you go Seismic Shock, with the only new introduction is Force of Frost, which may be pretty attractive. So I think it's between those three.
Yeah.
I think Fearsome Fortress is the one that lets you keep hitting, even as it makes you not all in on FLM, and you have to believe that the people you're playing against at Worlds will have a plan to take down FLM in some way to neutralize.
Yeah. I mean, we even mentioned that, like, potentially one of the reasons for bringing Gnarl Spirit is so that you have the speed and aggression to take out somebody like FLM. And,
Yeah,
you know, if you kind of know that that's the potential, you know, strategy line for your opponent, you just say, well, I will let you try for that, but also have this backup plan. And I mean, having watched FLM played with Fearsome Fortress. Force Frost, Fearsome Fortress is starting to get a little close there. But seeing some of the stuff they can pull off early, like with Fearsome Fortress, oh man, it can be
gross.
really, really rough when it's like, all right, well, as part of my change sequence, I push this guy onto this objective, and then he goes on guard, and I score. It's just like, sounds about right.
And then I'll charge and score, you know.
Get the other
one there. Yeah.
Yep. And all the while, it's like, these are the changers. These are the guys that I don't actually need to have survive while I set up everything for FLM. So, that would be where I'd reach. I don't. So I kind of have been thinking a lot about Force Frost because I like the deck a lot. But in trying to figure out how it would work, I didn't actually love it that much for FLM. Like, there'd be a lot of stuff you'd be having to do through FLM. And like, sure, you get a few more defensive upgrades, but like, you can't give the weapon upgrades to the changers. So like, you can't use the staff to get an extra wizard, and then you already have some wizard restricted stuff in that deck. Like, obviously the truly horrible combo that you could have there is you could have your damage reducer by 1 and the in-faction,
oh my god, the heal
and just be like, so FLM's not dying this game unless you're Mollog hitting him for like 7. So
and they've got some Bitter Storm help with the spell attack actions from the changers.
Yes, so they could manage it, but I don't know. I just it's like, it feels almost more like something I would really love to have for Championship, but maybe I don't use as a pairing for them in Nemesis.
I think smart money's on Seismic Shock or Fearsome Fortress, and I'd be interested to see if somebody's got enough reps in to make Force of Frost work.
Yeah. I think they're all good though. Like, you could probably make an argument for any one of them.
I'd agree. Next up with 3 choices, Hexbane's Hunters.
Yeah,
and
your babies.
This is totally, I love these guys. I'm very curious because I've seen so many different builds. I've seen a good Tooth and Claw build. I've seen a good Fearsome Fortress build. Somebody on the Discord was talking about a real spicy looking Breakneck Slaughter with these guys. There's a lot, Inspired Bridget has a scything attack. So the Breakneck Gambit's there. And then a little bit of speed goes a long way with them because they have that 3 movement.
So even just one, it makes a difference.
Yeah. If all of a sudden Bridget gets in the right spot for her inspired scything, or just for point blanking her pistol at somebody, can get a big hit off if she can get where she wants to go. If it doesn't come up until your second wave, and you add an extra dice on to Amos,
Yep.
when he's got woodcutter strength, then all of a sudden you have the opportunity for even more successes,
Yeah.
because you're rolling 3 or 4 dice, and now he can just really have some devastating chops on cleave. That's great for clearing some stormcast out. So I don't know if it's the same thing. I don't know if people have the reps to give it a shot, but I think they have. What I love is that they have so many different ways to go, that it should be interesting to see what happens with them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think,
uh,
you know, we've mentioned it before, but their strength as a warband is range and amazing upgrades, which
mm-hmm,
leaves you so many different avenues. Like there's so
mm-hmm,
much you could do with this warband. I kind of like, obviously I haven't played these guys much. You've repped them so many more times than anyone else in our local, but like Void Curse Thralls, as weird as it sounds, is like
oh man,
kind of crazy, and like I could see it working because free movement on some stuff combined with the
sure,
dog
yeah.
moves, and then like
React to the dog move with another. Like, you could get
yeah,
a lot of moves chained together.
yeah, and of course the potential downside that, you know, the first thing that I thought of when I heard about somebody trying this was like, but you have all these ranged attacks, and it's like, well, you have a lot of fighters who don't need to use ranged attacks.
Sure. I mean, Amos is happy to just
Yeah,
chop. Like, he could be void cursed. He could probably void curse either one of the dogs, certainly to start.
yep,
Whichever dog you're going to risk, go with that.
yep,
And then Amos is your backup.
yeah, and
Oh man, if you got a thrall maker in there,
yeah,
a thrall maker on range, because
yeah,
that's the thing that you don't often see is thrall maker, because it has a little counter synergy. It's not going to work. It seems great on somebody who's ranged, and then as soon as they get void curse, then it's a problem. But oh man, yeah, like if you had a what's retractable pistol,
yep. With Thrall Makers, so as soon as
Thrall
somebody
Maker.
moves in, you're just like, and you're void cursed.
Yeah, hope you didn't charge to a spot 3 away, because
Yeah.
now you cannot make that attack.
Yeah. And I mean, just thinking through some of the objectives, they already kind of have some of that suicide aggro thing going on,
Sure.
and Void Curse Thralls kind of has some of that too. So I don't know. It's maybe a little too crazy, but I like it. I'm thinking about actually trying it out in our local at some point, but
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. So the combo that we didn't see coming at Nova was Canaan's Reapers Void Cursed.
yep.
Well, Mark is playing. Mark is out there playing Hexbane's Hunters at this thing, so that's a guy who knows and appreciates Void Cursed.
No, well,
He might. That seems like a amazing counter meta pick. Because here's the other thing about Hexbane: they have 2 upgrades that negate pings.
yep.
If you put Deep Scars on Pock, he can say, "I got +1 wound. I'm taking 1 less damage from attacks, and now Gambits can't hurt me." And then, of course, there's the not Lucky Horseshoe, the Lucky Hexbeak Foot.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And that makes you immune to damage from Gambit. So having double Gambit ping protection
It's very, very good against the
meta,
wizards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like it. And it's even thematic.
Yeah. Oh, and then they have this Gambit might be a meta pick is Prayers of the Faithful, and this is the one that says your opponent cannot cast spells or play ploys until the next power step, I think.
So you just stop them like on the last power step or something, where it's like, oh, here it comes, and then nope, you're done.
Yeah, it's got restrictions as to when it can be played. I think you cannot play it in your opponent's 3rd and 4th. It's a weird, and I think it was written for the Ulgu seasons. This card cannot be played in opponent's 3rd or 4th power step, but you just play it in your own.
Yeah.
That's where you prefer to play, because you have the first play on those until the end of the next power step. So you shut down 2 power steps worth of casting. Enemy fighters cannot cast spells, and opponents cannot play pullout cards. So,
Wow, man.
Shut down critical reactions. There's a
Hey,
lot.
buddy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that's
a
pretty
lot of people
sweet.
who don't like to see that. So I wonder if
I
you
like it.
I wonder if you wedge that in as a counter pick. So
Well, a slight tangent, but related. I was thinking about all the ping that we currently have
mhm.
been seeing, and so I actually did bring my stalkers to the Q4 tournament here locally just this past weekend, and
Oh,
I
did you take that
and I
gambit?
slotted it in, and I think I ruined Jimmy's day twice because he was playing Toxic Terrors with the fish, and he tried to
Oh,
spine fin toxin me in both games, and I was like, nope.
oh wow, nice. All right.
And it was one of those where I was like, I can kind of tell that he's going to want to ping this fighter down because he only has one wound left. And
Yeah,
I had it in hand, and I was like, well, this card's just never leaving my hand because it guarantees it just stops that whatever
yeah.
setup. So
Oh,
it was like,
spicy.
that felt, I didn't expect it to actually feel good. And
Hmm.
admittedly, against every other matchup where nobody had pings, I was just like, this is exactly what I expected. But in the matchups that had pings, it was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is so
Mm.
ridiculous because it's a reaction. So it's just like, oh, you already announced, like you set it up, you announced the card you were going to play, and then I just say no.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
anyway, pretty cool.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. So Hexbane, I think there's a lot of ways for that to go wrong. I think there's that those would make for some really thinky games because it's all
Absolutely.
this positioning and identifying. Like, is this the game where I burn down the dogs in Pock, or is this the game where I leave them as the three alive and get everybody else? Yeah, and they're just their built-in mechanics create for these unexpected swings where somebody all of a sudden is no longer charged, or all of a sudden has an unexpected upgrade. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It is certainly a
yeah,
risk.
if there's a good pilot behind those, they have the potential to go a long ways. So,
Yeah, very high skill ceiling.
yeah. Well, speaking of a war band that we expect to probably go a long way, Domatan Storm Coven. Only 2 picks here.
Yeah.
Um, I think this is kind of along the lines of Ephelim's. Not a ton to say here. They are just super powerful.
Very,
When
very
you have
strong. Yep.
3 fighters with access to range 2 and range 3 attacks, that is a lot to deal with, and they're kind of guaranteed that whoever they get down to, like they can Voltron up just whoever to fill the
Yeah. Yep.
fill to take care of that end game.
Yeah. Between the three fighters, you sort of have your Swiss Army knife. Like one of them has cleave, one of them has ensnare, the other is just slightly higher damage. So it's like if you don't really need one or the other, you just you sort of let the game flow, and then it's like, all right, here's 9 upgrades for this fighter. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Turns out a lot.
Um, yeah. The in faction. So I will talk about some pairings in a second. They've got some solid surges.
I would
Certainly,
say
once they,
very good surges, but
yeah,
yes.
yeah, exactly. A number of which can be fairly passive because they've got a
Yep.
2 surge for casting 4 spells, a surge for having like different dice showing on a spell cast, stuff that can be cast without like really getting yourself fully committed. And then, but where they may find themselves in a little bit of trouble is those end phases that many of their end phases really strongly encourage you to go into enemy territory.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah. That is, I think, in Nemesis playing them, that is the number one thing that I did not like, is I was like, oh man, there is just some real opportunity for this to backfire
Yeah.
and feel really bad.
So, in your experience in Nemesis, what kind of things are people going to be doing to mitigate that drawback? Like what pairings?
Yeah. So I think what we've seen for the most part is that people have used seismic shock because it
Mm-hmm.
has the more passive end phases, and just, well, it also just has some really strong other cards. But like being able to be like, oh, I've got a wizard on an objective.
Hmm.
Great, I can do that in my territory. If like it feels like I can't afford to be aggressive, sure, I'll sit back. I don't care.
Yeah.
You got claim the prize, where like assuming that you were able to just have 2 objectives in your territory, that's
Hmm.
not too bad to have 2 of your wizards sit on objectives. Because that's a 3 glory end phase. Like if you can manage it, that's a blowout probably.
Mm.
But like cast more spells than the opposing warband is one of them, with manipulating the realm sphere. Like you just it gives you the ability to force the fight to come to you, which is more of, I think, what makes them hard to deal with. Because if they're
Hmm.
charging forward, then it's like, well, okay, I can kind of maneuver around that. But that's at least been my opinion and my what I've seen. Like when I first tried playing them, I used Daring Delvers, and the times that it worked out, it was like, this is cool. But when you didn't get it right and you were having to dive into enemy territory and then just get lit up, it didn't feel great. So
Yeah, daring delvers doesn't really solve any of your problems
no,
about not wanting to be in enemy
no,
territory.
not at all. It
So
was like, well, let's just lean into this even harder.
yeah.
So yeah, I would be pretty surprised if anyone brought much else. Seismic Shock just feels like the right choice, but
Yeah.
Force of Frost might be tempting just
You,
because of a few cards.
well, yeah. Honestly, actually, I think this is the pick.
Yeah,
I think if you can make it work, because I think Force of Frost allows them to be more passive, allows them to hang back and have you come to them, because they're playing more denial. It means that they can like surge into they can have 2 surge 2s for casting 4 spells. So you're looking at like maybe 5 surge of glory just for casting spells.
yeah,
That those are the ones that just come to the top of my mind there. And then I think a really big one, I'm sure you were thinking of these, is obviously that Frostworm Cloak for extra durability
yep,
on important fighters, and then armor of ice armor, frost armor.
yeah,
I might
whatever
like
it's
armor
called.
of yeah,
Find it
ice
here.
armor.
Armor of Ice.
Armor of ice. That all of a sudden gives you another caster, which is on 2 block and is a level 2, and keeps you
Yeah,
from having to necessarily, like, if you're in an awkward spot about like, ooh, I want this one to be a level 2, but I don't want to give up the protection on this. Well, now you can hand off the inspire and then go give a 2 block to the person inspiring. So I think Force of Frost allows a lot of passive surge, like a lot, and then enough defensive tech and denial that it's pretty scary, if you ask me. So
yeah. I'm not. So the Bitter Storm, I think, is definitely a really strong option, because it's like, well, if you're going to be casting spells anyway, but to get to 4 spells is sometimes hard if the dice don't cooperate, and you are going to have to use spell attacks, which I would say is, I mean, if you can make it so that they have to come to you, I guess it works out. But like Break the Ice, I don't think you can take. Cold Blooded, I don't think you want, because that's just super aggressive. Cold Snap is kill with a spell, which like is fine, but again,
yeah.
Glacial Cool, you'd have to have a leader holding an objective within 1 hex of no one's territory. Like, it's not bad. You could,
I mean, if there was a warband to do it, it might
yeah,
be this
it
one.
might be
Yeah.
them. Like, if anybody's going
Yeah.
to take Glacial Cool, it might be them. And then Stranglehold, which like,
Yeah,
I don't
probably
think
not.
you do that. There's just going to be games where that's like, oh, there's more objectives than I have fighters. Whoops.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're ping heavy, and I think if you're ping heavy and with your spell attacks, I think Cold Snap is a perfectly fine kill surge, because it'll trigger on attack actions or gambit.
Yeah. It's just not
It's not as passive as the rest, but I think with the do they have one that's like if everybody has inspired or something, like,
God,
or
it's
like
better than that. It's just
your third move or something?
second Inspire and and then there is one for just having everyone make your third move. It doesn't even have to be all three fighters. So their
Yeah, man,
in-faction surges
that
are,
is a lot of passive surge that
yeah,
they can work with. So if you
in-faction,
can,
it's
yeah,
it's gross. Channel the Storm. Just second or subsequent friendly fighter became inspired.
yeah,
It doesn't even have to
oof,
be from their reaction. And since they have the power card that's just inspire a fighter, sometimes you pick
yeah,
that up in your first activation. Uh,
uh,
anyway,
yeah.
we've spent a lot of time on these guys.
We have
They're very
the only
good.
thing I'd say, if somebody sees that Force of Frost pairing, like Cold of the Void, they almost certainly have taken that, and they're
Yeah,
almost certainly stacking frost counters on somebody to get those more passive end phases.
I would think so.
You got to be real careful. Get yourself, like, try not to give them a free 2 glory by being spread out, and then be aware of who's getting the frost.
Yeah.
So
And like, if you go first, probably at least be thinking about the fact that they could be coming in with Avalanche on the first activation on the
yeah,
turnaround. And like,
yeah, yeah. In my mind, this is potentially the most degenerate pairing of the faction and rivals deck.
I think
I could be overstating the risk, but I think this is a scary one.
yeah, it certainly has the highest like ceiling. If everything goes perfectly, it's probably a very quick game, right? Like you
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's one of those control things. I see what you're saying. Like you're avoiding attacks. Yeah, I mean, I think if not a quick game, it can certainly feel like a lost cause for if
sure,
like
yeah. It's
if
like,
you get the boards wrong and you don't have the tech to work against these
it's like,
guys.
what do I do?
Yeah,
I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. It's like if I
yeah,
charge them, well, I'm walking into the kill zone. If I
yeah,
let them come to me and try and hang back, there's an avalanche waiting, and if they're inspired, that's a pretty likely spell to go off,
yeah, yeah.
and it could be a ping off of your entire warband. Like, ooh, man, it
Sure.
feels bad. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. There's only 2 of them. I think if there's a Damatan's Force of Frost out there, that might be the one to beat. And I think maybe one of the Hexbanes or Gnarl Spirit Pack. I think those are the counter picks that might do it. But let's take a look at what else is out there,
Yeah.
because these are the ones that are a little thinner on the ground. Uh, we we got Malag's Mob listed.
Whoa.
Uh, whoa! I haven't thought about Malag in forever, and here's why. We've been playing a ton of Nemesis, and Malag's faction objectives are terrible.
Oh man, they
Um,
are atrocious. I was even thinking about this today, and like, just I'm I'm hesitant to even just be like, let's pull up one of these and see just how terrible they really were. uh like, all right, let's go for some of his end phase cards. uh well, how about this? Carnage. It's a 2 glory end phase. We kind of like 2 glory end phase. Score this in an end phase if your warband took 3 or more enemy fighters out of action in the preceding action phase.
did you
Whoa!
did you one turn tables Storm Coven?
Right?
Oh no, yeah.
And you get 2 glory for that. So,
Oh man.
oh, and hey, here's another one. Rampage. 3 glory. Score this in end phase if your warband took 4 or more enemy fighters out of action in the preceding action phase.
What? Yeah.
Yikes.
There's a few good power cards in that deck. They have an in-faction distraction.
Always good.
What is it, like Growls in the Dark or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah. It's something like that. Let me see if I can pull it. I've got it here someplace. Predatory Growls.
I knew it was Growls. Yeah, Predatory Growls. He's got a reroll that he can use. I think there's a +1 damage and a +1 dice thing, which at Gambit speed. So there's some power cards, a handful that are solid. But I think what that tells me is that this Malag's Mob player has to be taking a rivals deck that they can score, like that almost stands alone on its objectives. Like it has to be. So pros and cons,
Yeah.
they can lean into some of the ones that have like internal stuff, like well, like breakneck slaughter. If you're leaning into that, and then bunch of impetus is going off, then that goes. Although it's got stuff that everyone has to have a move or charge, and Slag Squeak
Yep.
screwing you up
You
on
can't
that. So
can't do the move stuff with Stalag Swig.
oof.
Trying to have all your
Yeah.
fighters within 2 of enemy fighters, like that's not doable
But I mean,
realistically.
maybe you write that off. I don't know if there's like if you can just cut that end phase because giving Molag the chance for some. Well, he can't take acrobatic or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's too big.
He can take the 2 block one for double move, right?
Yeah, he
I
could.
don't know. Yeah, so I don't know what, but I don't think. I mean, gosh, it's so hard to picture because you can maybe get some Delver stuff off because the lag squig just shows up on a token, but that's not great.
It's not great.
I
The
don't
thing
know.
I was maybe thinking about is that you do have like an entire faction basically of beasts. So
Mm,
you could try for some of those stuff in Beastbound Assault. It's not
yeah,
great. At least I don't think it's great.
yeah,
But it might be doable. Like just looking at end phases there, like more enemy fighters out of action than friendly fighters out of action. Like that might be doable, right?
yeah,
Because Malog's
yeah,
probably not going and down, and unless they just run past him, which is easier said than done sometimes. Uh,
yeah. And
but
I
I
guess
don't
yeah,
love it.
Void Curse you could do because if you lean in hard to the whole Void Curse mechanic, go for Reshaped Realm, maybe.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't personally feel like end phase is the strength of Void Curse, though.
No, I mean usually there's a couple that work for you. Threatening presence is going to be hard for him, but maybe not impossible because Bat Squig's quick and can get to a spot where you're needed.
Yeah, and you can
Um,
start with the Stalag Squig kind of to.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to mark this Malag's Mob as brave mystery player.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
looking forward to seeing what
okay,
that.
so maybe you don't care as much about your like maybe your glory deck is like all the very consistent but very low scoring stuff, and then you're just
Mm,
like, I'm just gonna splat everybody, and
yeah,
you
sure.
bring something like Void Curse because you want to have the option to, you know, mess up
Yeah.
people's spellcasting and ranged attacks, but then also have extra movement with Mollog.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you
maybe,
know what can be fun with Malag is what does he got that the grin?
yeah, we get to draw cards when you take.
No, this is the uninspire somebody that attacks you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh man, we haven't seen any of that tech in a while. Yeah, I don't even.
Yeah.
What is that even called? I don't remember.
It was in the Unbound
Yeah, Power and
Power
Bound. Man,
Unbound.
that card pack. Memories.
Yeah, unsettling grin or something like that.
Horrible Grin. As a reaction
Horrible
after an
grin.
enemy fighter's range 1 attack that targets friendly Mollog but does not take him out of action, they are inspired and cannot be inspired.
Yeah, I forgot about the range one, so that's a bummer. Maybe you don't take that because I was like, oh, it's
Yeah.
great. You're gonna uninspire all the Storm Coven guys or FLM or something like that. Like, nah, I guess.
Yeah, it's not great. There's sort of a weird one here that I forgot even existed. Shrouded in Gloom. Attack actions with range 3 or more in the next activation have a dice characteristic of 1 fury.
Oh, that's a Malak card.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, that would certainly mess up like Ephlem and Domitans and Hexbanes. I mean, it's a one-off, so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you save yourself from maybe 1 attack, but
Yeah.
I don't know,
Maybe.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's gonna be tough. Malag is gonna be taking a whole lot of pings. He's gonna be taking some spawn mob, big chomps.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah,
if he can pull it off, then go for it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, he there's always the chance, right, that he just rolls hot and there's nothing you can do, right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's always been Mollog, and maybe that's just the person's plan, and more power
Yeah.
to him. I don't know.
Yeah.
we kind of assume we get into these metas and we're like, well, these are definitely the best choices.
Sure.
Right up until somebody shows us that they're not. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, that the next this is maybe our other little bit of head scratcher is Sirenized Razors. So
Yeah.
the of the two war bands that came out in Death Gorge, this is the one that people are, I don't know, I don't want to say less hot on, but certainly feel like they have more problems to overcome.
I would agree.
I wonder what this player saw, if they're just excited about this warband or if they see something in here. I think the ability to hammer tide has potential.
Yeah.
There's always when you have that, just like, I'm going to have a guaranteed one. If I get my positioning right, I can do this one, and it won't cost me. It'll cost me an activation, but it won't cost me a card, and I won't have to roll dice for it. It's got potential.
It certainly does. I mean, there are times where you look at the math of it and it's like, well, an activation for a damage isn't great, but if you have ways to reposition enough, it's like, well, what if I just do this for every activation? What happens
Right.
then? And it's like, oh, well, that's
And
12
I've done
damage.
12 damage.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's enough, but
Yeah.
it's certainly something. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the squid is really good, and I feel like Siren Eye is really good, and I don't know what to make of the other two fighters, to be honest.
Right.
And I think that's sort of the problem that probably most everyone's trying to solve with them, is it's just like, what do I do to not just lose half my warband, give up some glory, and then have to try and figure this out?
Yeah. What do you think they're pairing with?
Well, I know Skylar was really interested in Fearsome Fortress, which is on brand.
Yeah.
And I can
Story checks out.
I can kind of see some of the reasoning, although I don't love having to put their fighters like in the middle and just sort of telegraph to be like, this is where all my fighters are going to be, and know that you don't have to necessarily like do much else but contend that zone. I kind of like the objectives, but I just worry about the fighters being too fragile for it. Like,
yeah, I don't know that you can afford to be right up in the middle, in the fortress territory there. Like it just feels like you'll lose your fighters a little too quick.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like
I know the squid has some nice repositioning to make some cool stuff happen there, but still.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they probably need to be able to hang back and just like wait it out until they have their stat boost, and then be like, okay, now I go in, and then, having to try and work that. But it feels rough. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what you can do to be passive enough to like be able to buy that time and not get behind. Maybe Force of Frost can do it. Like,
I know there's some discussion about Force of Frost as being a caster centric build. I think you're already being super careful with Siren Eye with this warband, and I think that like turns that risk up to 11. Like, you have to be so careful. With Siren
feels
Eye
a lot like the old Ilthari problem, where it was like, well, I already have to rely on Ilthari, so let's just lean into the slide. And it's like,
can't get any worse.
Very quickly, your feet can come out from under you, and you're just like, well, that didn't work.
I think the other pairing I'm interested here is Void Curse as well. Void Cursing this warband. If I mean, both the thralls can be void cursed without any penalty, and in fact, inspired, they then defend on shields and dodges.
Yep.
So that's nifty. I think the extra move tech we're already talking about, if you had ways to reposition, then all of a sudden Hammer Tide maybe gets even better. So
potentially,
I think there's some possibility there. I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they are very new. Like, we don't even have that many local players with a box in hand. Like I think I was asking on Saturday, like how many have we seen? And I think it's like 4 total boxes of our
Mhm.
local group, which our local group is like what, 16 people or something. So
Yeah.
it's not really out there yet. I don't
Right.
think, I'm sure that there is a puzzle to be solved here. I just don't know that everyone's had the time to do it, and maybe somebody thinks they have, and
Mm.
that's going to be the thing. I look forward to seeing whatever they play, though. I'm
Yep.
very curious. I know a lot of people are excited about the warband, but they're just not sure what to do with them yet.
Yeah. Well, that moves us past our 2 head scratchers. There's Crimson Court. There's one of those out there. So Crimson Court, perennially always worth a look, because 4 fighters with 4 wounds and 4 move.
Never
That's just
bad.
some good stat blocks right there. I think the main thing that you need to overcome is figure out what the surge situation. They got a couple nice ones in faction, but then some problems there. Like maybe one that's, hey, is everybody in enemy territory? Well, if that's not something you want to do, that forces you to be fairly aggressive. If you're not prepared to do that,
Yeah.
then that's a problem. So I think I would guess that there might be some tooth and claw here going on. I tried building because I thought, hey, Force of Frost should have some potential here, because I've got 3 things that can make level 2s. I can upgrade the 2 existing guys. Actually, I got 4, right?
Yeah,
Because
technically.
yeah, I could end up with 3 level 2 casters if I include the staff, and then either get the chalice, cool and calm, and armor of ice are all ways to bump people up. Um, that feels like there's a caster build there, but that caster build is probably not wanting to be quite as aggressive as the surges may force you to be. So I don't know. I just have not. I know I've seen plenty of tooth and claw with them, and I think if you want to lean into that, I think that's a viable build with these guys.
Yeah, I would agree. I really love the idea of doing the wizard thing, but I definitely see lots of problems. I tried building it
Mm-hmm.
just to see how it felt putting it together, like where the inflection points for picking cards, and uh yeah, the objectives become a problem pretty quickly. It's like, ooh, I can have this deck that feels like it's maybe reliable, but it's got like 14 glory.
Yeah,
Is that enough? And probably not, right? And
yeah,
I would say they are an unfortunate warband in that they have really great fighters, but they are like forever anchored to the hunger mechanic.
right.
Just no longer exists outside of their in-faction cards, and their in-faction support for it is not enough. So it's like you just immediately have a few cards that are not viable, and you're kind of then back to like a season 1 and 2 warband where there wasn't enough in-faction cards to even pick from, let alone have good choices.
Yeah, I was looking at these guys where I was like, what if there was Force of Frost build that also included the have 10 hunger at the end of the game, and it was just too risky. Like there wasn't enough ways to generate that hunger and feel good about it while still doing the other things you want to do. But I think their stats and speed, they may be able to make some things happen. Maybe along the lines of Gnarl Spirit Pack, like enough aggression, enough stats to maybe make things challenging and decide the game one way or the other pretty early.
Yeah, I think that's probably the plan. You could probably do Breakneck Slaughter with them. Like
Oh,
they
sure.
seem like they're they like being fast. They even have
Mm.
a card that scores off of having a high speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like just be move 6, and you can score one of their end phases. Like it's not great,
Yeah.
but it's consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like I don't know that it's enough, but I could definitely see it. I could see them benefiting from like the extra damage gambit. I could see them benefiting from the extra accuracy one. They've certainly got choices. Uh, it their inspire mechanic is also kind of a weird inflection point for the warband too, right? It's they were sort of designed where it's like, well, they're kind of going to go both ways. And like now it's harder to do that. So like, do you just like, I used to always think of them as like, you're going to lean into the blood thing because it gets their stats there much faster, but getting the hunger tokens to like get those bonuses is so much slower now that
Yeah.
trying to actually do that it's not as reliable. And so then it's like, well, now I need to try and inspire, but to try and inspire, you have to remove all their hunger counters, which has this big delayed effect as well. So
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. They do have a couple power cards that are helping them out a lot. They have a Gambit Speed move.
Yep.
And they have an upgraded Von Marusi armor or something like that.
Yeah.
And it does one thing when inspired, another thing when bloodthirsty, and nothing if you're neither. But the bloodthirsty one is ping prevention,
Which is pretty nice.
Pretty nice. But it's some work to get there because you got to get yourself the upgrade on, and you have to get yourself to bloodthirsty. So
yeah. They're man, it's like they feel like they should be able to do so many things, and they just, I don't know. It's like they're trying to do too many things.
Yeah. But I mean, as we said, although it was championship environment, they won ACON 2022.
Yeah.
So I think they have the benefit of solving some of that objective deck issue a little bit easier with a wider spread. But I'm sure this player is. I mean, they're got to be taken seriously.
Oh yeah, no, you can't. I mean, it as most competent aggro warbands, it's like they're a couple dice rolls away from just annihilating you. There's not much you could do about it. They have really good attack profiles, so don't sleep on them. But they are a one of for a reason. Yeah.
Well, that moves us to another Dire Chasm era warband and another 4-fighter, 4 wounds apiece warband. That would be Headcracker's Mad Mob.
Yep.
I think this is a strong pick, and I would not have been surprised to see more than just the one. But there is just the one. And I think they're a great choice. They also have ping protection. They have an upgrade that says if they would take 1 damage, they take no damage.
Yep.
So that's if they get that on an important fighter, good to go. They have the potential to kind of power up a fighter to really knock down some big guys. If you can get Wallop or Tooth Dagger powered up, they have the potential to get to 4 damage with just 1 power card, be it Gambit Speed damage or an upgrade.
Yeah.
And a little help from Grievous with Inspires. And they have so many cool tricks, right? Like, and then I think the other thing that Skylar's been shouting out about them, and he would do if he was on this, is that the current environment with the charged out status benefits them quite a bit because they have a few objectives that need them to have primacy, but also maybe want them to be like I think there's their third end phase, which is have primacy and be in enemy territory.
Yep.
That's worth 3 glory. So I think they can often find themselves in this situation like, I can get primacy by going to get the kill, but it involves running back into no man's land or into my territory. Now I'm stuck, except they aren't anymore. So if they're down to just 1 fighter, they can run back, get that kill, and then turn around and move to where they need to be. So I think some of their end phases have improved, and I think the nature of the primacy situation means that they essentially are smuggling a potential extra 3 glory into their objective deck, which is a big deal.
Very much so. Yeah.
I think in most games you can think that it's maybe going to be a net 1, but in Nemesis it's really hard for other warbands to get up to that 4 damage to 1 shot. So you really typically have 1 chance to get primacy back, and that is by killing Headcracker, who, if they're being smart, is not available to die.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes even if you manage to get it by killing him, they're just going to use like one of their power cards that takes it back or whatever.
Yeah. It's mine again.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's really rough.
I Well, so let's talk about pairings. I am actually going to recuse myself from this because the individual playing Mad Mob, I helped them with some practice games, so I have a good sense of what they're bringing, and I don't want
Yeah.
to. Although, as we said, this will be getting dropped once things are already underway. But I'm not going to pretend that I don't know what they're bringing. So, what are your thoughts on what the pairing might be?
Well, I've seen Fearsome Fortress played with them a lot, and I know that it has a lot of strong options. So I would not be surprised to see that. Part of the reason for it is that they get that free push with two of their fighters at the beginning of the game, which allows them to be on to an objective before their first activation, which means that if they can start a hand with the surges for either charging off of an objective in your territory or going on guard on an objective in no one's territory, that it's like free glory for them, which is really nice. They can also benefit some from having the Mason's Great Hammer, which is a really solid weapon upgrade that you don't really get in any of the other sort of viable pairings with them. Although I guess that could be changed now. Breakneck Slaughter has a spear that's not bad. But I think sometimes whatever their bow guy is called.
Daco?
Yeah. Sometimes like just taking those arrow shots isn't enough. It's like maybe he needs a weapon. And so I think having that flexibility is not a bad thing. So I like pairings that give them that as an opportunity. They have really good end phase cards, so they don't really need to worry about that so much. And a lot of their power cards are pretty good too. I've never seen anyone or heard anyone talk about pairing them with Void Curse, but I could see it. Their defensive profiles are not great, so like they actually kind of get a bonus outside of. Let's see. I'm actually wondering now. Does
Headcracker starts in 2 dodge and Tooth Dagger inspires to 2 dodge. The other guys just inspired to rerolls, but those would apply to their one block defense.
On the one block, so you'd still like that.
They would get a benefit on those two. You wouldn't want to Void Curse Daco unless you were putting a weapon out.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean that would feel a little bit bad, but I don't know. Extra movement is never amiss with a 3-move aggressive warband, which I think maybe is more of a shout to Breakneck than it is to Void Curse, but I could see both.
Sure.
I think I'm trying to remember what Amon used at Adepticon last year. I want to say it was Tooth and Claw. Which like there's nothing wrong with taking Tooth and Claw with these guys. That'll certainly work. That's just a very aggressive option, which I kind of prefer having some more passive glory. But if you want to just embrace like I'm gonna come and hit you,
yeah. I mean, it worked for Acon 2023, and the nature of Nemesis decks is such that somebody can just pick that straight up. I imagine most of the players here have the experience level that they're probably building their own, but that is still available.
Yeah. They're a fairly flexible band too, so I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised at any of these, and they have enough wounds that like they can do a little bit of holding, and their attack profiles are all pretty solid, except for Daco, but sometimes.
I mean, and somebody even pointed out that 2 shots off of Daco is roughly like it's better than 1 3 Fury 1 damage shot.
Yeah. So
and he'll get the charge token, which is sometimes helpful to get somebody, if he's already where you want him to be, you want to get a charge token so that somebody else can make another attack after they're charged out.
Yeah. So if you're only ever planning to use Daco in that like idea that I don't care that he's dealing 1 damage and he's only going to make 1 attack per round, like sure, that's fine. And then you treat it more like a pseudo 4 Fury, maybe 2 damage attack. Like, it's this kind of weird thing.
Daco's worth mentioning as well, because he's got the, again, talking about the charged out situation and how important primacy is. I mean, you can end up with these situations where, let's say the enemy has focused down Tooth Daga and Wallop, and now you're trying to make things happen with Headcrack Tooth Daga, or Headcrack and Daco. You're on your last activation. If you got charges on both of them, Daco can take another shot, or Daco can now just take a move, and the move, if you don't already have primacy, can end up being worth 1 glory plus whatever it unlocks because of that primal tracker.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah.
Especially late in the game, as fighters get fewer and fewer, there's a bigger chance that there's an objective available for Daco to just walk over to, pick up primacy, say, hey, I just got myself primacy. I will be able to get that 1 extra glory in the end. Like, if you, often there's that situation where like you have a play that is a guaranteed glory, take it.
Yep.
So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess that comes back to like primacy can't really be overstated into how big of a deal it is in Nemesis, because there are some matchups where it is straight up just +3 glory for this warband. There is almost never a situation where they won't have it, and that is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that just leaves one warband left, and that's the Gore Chosen of Drum.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable talking about this one a little bit. I really leaned into them for our last league, and enjoyed them. I think they have some of their strength is they just have great end phases in faction. And they are a little bit hurting for surges. They have 1 surge that is not a kill surge, and then 3 surges that are.
Yeah.
So they're stuck probably taking 2 kill surges in whatever you're doing. It's tough to find a deck that's going to give you 4 non-kill surges. So that's the main thing they're looking for. I spent, I should say, that high end phase, and then the ability to like really kind of get to a point where you're just throwing some pretty heavy haymakers. The right upgrades on Gore Hulk means that he can be throwing 4 damage hits later in the game, or some highly accurate choking grasp attacks.
Yeah.
As well as the range 2 attacks coming off of one or possibly both of the other guys. So they have some defensive issues. They can have a stack of health, but that goes away pretty fast when you're never defending on better than a block. You could defend on better than a block if you're bringing Breakneck.
Yeah. Man, that's kind of scary, isn't it?
It is. With some other kind of defensive tech, that it'd be interesting. That's possible, and it has some good, as we mentioned, some good aggro objectives. So there's some possibilities there. Tooth and Claw, always good with them.
Yep.
Just to lean into what they're already doing, get that extra accuracy, and stuff like the internal surrender that sacrifices the defense dice. You don't care because you're already on the 1. And so that's great. And then Paths of Prophecy has a couple great non-kill surges, and it has terrible end phases, but again, you don't really care that much because you already have some good ones in-house. So, and it has an accuracy upgrade with the +1 dice if you are on or attacking somebody on a feature token. So that's pretty good there.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that one, it's specifically, it has to be an objective, which is still pretty good, but like, it does limit your choices sometimes.
Guided by Fate.
Yeah.
No, just feature token. +1 dice to this fighter's attack action as this fighter and or the target is on a feature token.
Oh man, there you go. Shows how often I'm on non-objective feature tokens with my lizards.
Right. Totally. So there's some accuracy. They're happy to have that. And then, of course, the one I ran a ton with was Void Curse Thralls, and I think that's got some great stuff. It had movement tricks that lets you get those powerful range 1 fighters, especially in this case Gore Hulk, into position. Gore Hulk loves to be Void Cursed because he can't be driven back. So if you want to come in and hit him with range 1, you're going to be standing next to him if you didn't kill him.
Which you probably didn't in Nemesis.
Probably not. And then the extra move, be it the gambit speed move, the forced movements,
Yeah, man.
or the reactions means that you can get his overhead smash off. That was really fun to run that card, and what a great way to just smear some changers off the board. Or
Absolutely.
if you've got a little bit of damage in on one of the Storm Coven, you can say like, hey, I don't care about your 2 block. I'm just going to do this the smashy way. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, hold him down and
Yeah.
choke him out.
Yeah. So again, I think we've laid out quite a few possibilities for pairings there. I just because I played so much Gorchosen, I'd be kind of rooting for this player. But I think they may be a little more dice dependent than some of the other folks.
Could be.
That's not even entirely true. I mean, those end phases, some of those end phases can score if you did nothing, which is always kind of weird. So I'll be eagerly looking at that build. That's one of those warbands that I've played enough where I'm looking forward to seeing what that deck was and picking that apart a little bit, seeing what they went with. But that brings us to the end of our 17 decks and our speculation on them. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to kind of dig into looking back at those in retrospect?
Not really. I mean, like those are the things I would expect. Like if we were to see something crazy, like I could maybe see a Toxic Terrors deck coming out just because it's a fairly flexible deck. It can kind of do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I will say,
is that a Molag pairing? I don't think
about that. It could be. I mean, like the weird thing would be all the like poisons I don't know are really super helpful for Molag, but you would get Carve a Path.
Yeah.
And that's pretty great for Molag. I don't know. Bobby was running Toxic Terrors with Drippers at our Q4.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite like get it until we were playing. And I was just like, oh, it like being able to just make somebody's defense characteristic one dodge for the next attack is a big deal when you're an aggro warband.
And you're talking spit venom? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Or being able to say like, I'm gonna be able to do freezing venom, and now all of a sudden you are, well, I have ensnare on all of the attacks against that fighter.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, I guess, if you can get the positioning right, spit venom onto a Storm Coven or somebody who's got Armor of Ice or somebody who's got the breakneck slaughter defensive upgrades, like that improves your odds substantially.
It's not great. And I still sort of struggle with the objective deck for Toxic Terrors, mostly because I just haven't used it at all. But every time I read them on paper, I'm like, this seems like a lot of work, which isn't what I would personally want, but sometimes you can just make it happen. So, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily expect to see it, but if it showed up, it also would kind of make sense because it is flexible and it can kind of fill in a lot of different things. I'm sad to see we don't know, but like I would be shocked to see Daring Delvers, even though I really love the deck. I think it's kind of doing the wrong thing for the meta right now. Being pretty much forced to be in enemy territory is a really dangerous prospect these days.
Yeah.
So not probably a deck to be running in Nemesis anymore. But I still made it work last year at Adepticon, and it felt pretty good, even though there was a lot of stuff where that probably, I don't know, maybe it shouldn't have worked as well as it did, but it felt like it just kind of rolled sometimes. So I don't know. I think the only one that I really wouldn't expect to see at all would be some of the old like Deadly Depths. Like, I don't think anyone's going to run that. I'd be shocked. I'd be truly shocked.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kairos is somebody who, again, from Path to Glory, is somebody who I feel like I think a lot about this game and spend a lot of time on it. That is somebody I'm not sure what he does other than this game, because like everywhere I go,
There he
like
is.
I feel like when we get off this and I go to send you a DM, like Kairos might actually be in that DM with us somehow. Like he just managed to appear everywhere,
Yeah.
and have insightful comments. He mentioned that Deadly Depths was a great pairing for the Headsman's Curse, which would have been interesting
Whoa.
to see them as somebody who can like power up and maybe get some one shots in.
Okay, I'm curious now. Pulling this up right now.
I have so many decks I have to build after this if it wasn't working tomorrow.
I know, right?
Yeah. And you, lucky listener, will already know some of the results here. You may already know the pairings by the time you're hearing this.
Yeah.
So we may look to do an addendum. We've really been burning the candle at both ends. I think I've used that phrase once already in reference to Skylar, but really pushing a lot of content out. So I don't know if we have the stamina to get some more out of sequence releases, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see where our personnel are at.
Maybe if there's no editing.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes editing doesn't go so well. Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is great. I'm really excited to do this. It would be cool to send a rep from the cast to participate in a future year, but that's a lot out of our control.
Yeah, man.
But
gotta win a pretty big tournament. So
yep. But we've had some close calls, and I think it's just gonna be fun to watch along. There's a lot of names I know, a lot of people I'd be happy to see walk away with a victory there. A lot of people put the time and effort in, to get it. So I think this is awesome. I'm glad this is a thing that's happening.
Yeah. I mean, it should show that there's been enough growth across all of the games, but like Underworlds being included here feels like a big deal to me.
Yeah, for sure.
And I have to imagine they'll be doing streaming for all of the games of all the different types of games. So maybe we'll be able to watch some live Underworlds from Worlds. That would be...
Yeah. One side comment is that the rounds, they are pacing at the same pace as they're keeping time with the AOS and 40K rounds. So
that's right.
There's you have like 3 or 4 hours to do a best of 3, and it's not best of 3, it's 3 matches or three games. Every match will be 3 games. So you could go 0-3 or 3-0.
Yeah. Cause it's all just a point system. So there's no match points. It's like all games. So
yeah.
That'll be wild.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having to play all 3 games every round for a 2-day tournament?
Yeah. Well, I think this goes longer than 2 days for one.
Well,
and there's very few, like I said, they got like 3 or 4 hours to play 3 games for each round. So there are going to be some leisurely rounds, which might make for some very leisurely streams, but we'll see.
Yeah. But I mean, still, it's a lot of Underworlds. Sometimes you feel like, you get the mental exhaustion from having to play in your third round and or third game in a match. And it's like, sometimes I just want to be able to go 2-0 and just have that break. Yeah. And, you don't really get that here. So this should be interesting.
Yeah. I think that about does it. Is there anything else you want to talk about on this topic before we move to close it out?
I think we can close this one out. I guess the only other thing I'm thinking about is that also as part of Worlds, we are going to get the next preview, and that will include whatever the next warband is. So...
Oh yeah. Quick prediction.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, I think we saw from the roadmap that it's going to be destruction. And so this has been a dangerous track to try and take in the past, but I'm going to say because of the previous Warcry release where they're like, hey, here's these new, I guess they're not new, but we haven't seen them really before, ogres that are like... these savage ogres that are starving, and like more so than a normal ogre. Because if you don't know, in the AOS lore, ogres have an insatiable appetite. They'll always keep eating, and like their god is even like just basically a giant belly that is
Yeah.
just constantly eating. And so these guys are like even more hungry, I guess, somehow. So they are some crazy looking models. Eric, one of our guys from the War Cry podcast, I saw his models built up, and yikes. I am like both interested and terrified to see what they might do if that's the direction they go.
Nice.
What do you think? What do you think they might do?
I mean, I think Gorgers is a good call. That'd be cool. I think it feels like Ogres is a good guess, specifically because like the Everwinter has cursed
Yeah.
Death Gorge. I'm going to throw out Yetis. Yetis are a something that exists in there, but their models are like super ancient and goofy looking. So I'm curious if a reimagining of those might come about.
Yeah.
So,
well, it'd be sweet if they could have sort of like another one of those warbands where it's like a mix of different types of models. You get like a couple of Noblars and a Yeti and an Ogre, and that'd be sweet.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a Gorger, a Yeti, and some Noblars or something like that. Like a couple 5-wound fighters and then a couple smallers.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting mix. So, well, I think that's going to do it for us. Excited to talk about it. We'll be at you in a couple weeks' time. If you want to talk to us in the meantime, there's always whatthehexcast@gmail.com, on the site formerly known as Twitter @WTHcast. You can check out all our content on themortalrealms.com. That is any of our blog entries, any of the other podcasts on there. Coming up, we're going to have some consultation. We may be debriefing what we learned from Worlds. We might be jumping into some of the promised background stuff. We still might do that rotation thing. I know we got some input from some folks, but been a little bit overcome by events. So we got some options. We will be at you with something interesting when we get a chance, and hopefully we'll get the crew bulked back out once the demands of life have slowed a little bit here. Believe it or not, I do have a Flavitex quiz for you here.
Whoa!
This is going to be,
could be from anything.
I know this is a widespread. So, and I'm not even going to give you a hint because I think you might still get it. All right. Well, no, I'll tell you this. It is an objective. How about that?
Okay, sure. Narrow it down to
all right.
third
it is an
of
objective,
the cards.
And it is from a warband that is included in this, that is represented at Worlds. The quote is attributed to nobody. Due to their long hibernation and regenerative abilities, it's almost impossible to tell if a Troggoth is dead or just resting.
Oh, is it asleep? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's it. You got it. I thought the long hibernation was a good call out for this.
Yeah, coming back with a fury here.
I don't think we'll see that in their deck because that is the one that needs them. Scored an end phase of a friendly Moloch, took no action in the preceding action phase.
Bad. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
Could be a super passive Moloch somehow. I don't know.
I hope we have some wild mad scientists taking the dive up there. But all right, for your recommended listening, this is a salute to the 6 Canadians represented there. Took a Canadian band. This is Broken Social Scene, and in the spirit of the nations fighting against each other out there, we're taking the song "Capture the Flag." That's off of "You Forgot It" in People.
Ooh, nice.
For What the Hex, I've been Davy.
And this is Phil.
Do I still have you?
Oh, no.
Unbelievable.
I can still hear you. I still have my waveform. Ah, jeez.
Phil, I can't hear you. You kind of cut off mid-sentence. So.
And our local.
Phil, did I lose you again?
Oh no. I would hope not, but I guess you must
Phil,
have.
can you hear me?
I can, but obviously you can't hear me. Oh boy. Yeah.
Phil, are you there?
I am still here. Did you lose me
Man,
again?
all right. I guess we're toast.
Dang it.
I'm gonna hit stop. And somehow we managed to record it.
Yeah. No fault of our own. Did we have to do this
I know.
3 times?
Yeah.
And hopefully the intro is usable.